Hi, I'm Nikki with the Leaderboard, and with Dragon Ball FighterZ out now, we thought it was time to put the latest game against its most prominent past entries. Here are some of the differences between the Dragon Ball Budokai series and Dragon Ball FighterZ. Also, don't forget to click that bell icon to become part of the notification squad and subscribe to the Leaderboard for more gaming content. Background and release. Dragon Ball Z was a cultural phenomenon circulating throughout every 90s kid's childhood. Toonami made sure pretty much every youngster in the early aughts had a Dragon Ball phase, even the not weird ones. So, the first DBZ game that comes to mind is the original Dragon Ball Z Budokai, released in the West in 2002 for the PlayStation 2 and then on the Nintendo GameCube in 2003. But Budokai was far from the first video game made for the Dragon Ball franchise. In fact, there was a long and illustrious history of weird Dragon Ball games, and we'll happily run down that list with the utmost terror in our eyes. The distinction of being the very first game based on the Dragon Ball franchise belongs to Dragon Ball Dragon Daihikyo, released on September 27, 1986 for the Epoch Super Cassette Vision. However, this game couldn't contend with the first Dragon Ball game to come stateside, Dragon Ball Shenlong no Nazo. This game was an oddball Zelda knockoff and was imported to North America in March of 1988 as Dragon Power. It's bizarre to look at. Parts of the game look like Dragon Ball but sort of surreally off. For example, they put a headband on Goku and made him look more like a monkey. Maybe the developers were trying to make more after Journey to the West and make him similar to Sun Wukong? Whatever the reason, he's on an epic journey to collect the Crystal Balls. Huh? There are approximately 44 billion other Dragon Ball games released across the NES, Super NES, Sega Saturn, Famicom, Wonder Swan Color, Sega System 32, Mega Drive, PS2, PS3, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, GameCube, Original Xbox, Xbox 360. Need we go on? So rest assured that Budokai wasn't even the first fighting game released for the franchise. That distinction belongs to Dragon Ball Z Genko Takachi Budokai, released in December of 1992 for the Famicom. However, the first fighting game to gain any real traction was probably Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22 for the Sony PlayStation, which was released in Europe in 1996. And it was terrible. No, really. GameSpot gave it a 1.2 out of 10, calling it, and we quote, a really, really terrible game. Dragon Ball GT Final Bout followed this atrocity in 1997, which many fans claim was marginally better, but still pretty bad. And finally, in 2002, there was the release of Dragon Ball Z Budokai. All that said, Budokai and its follow-ups were undoubtedly the breakthroughs in North America. Given that Dragon Ball Z is a show about superhumans fighting each other, by the time the PS2 was released, graphics and gameplay had finally caught up to the point where players didn't have to be JRPGing their way through super killer fight scenes. It only took 20 years. Budokai spawned 3 sequels released between 2002 and 2004. Dragon Ball FighterZ released worldwide for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on January 26, 2018, and shows early signs of phenomenal success. So that's a little context for all of our viewers out there. Now, let's get into the meat of this whole bout, the differences. Character selection. The original Dragon Ball Z Budokai shipped with 23 selectable fighting characters, covering everyone up to the Android Saga. You would unlock many of these selections by completing story mode and world tournament on various difficulties, much in the style of classic fighting games. For Budokai 2, this selection increased up to the Kid Buu Saga, bringing it to a total of 34 playable characters. By the time Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 released, the roster had ballooned to 44 selectable from the start. Most fans consider Budokai 3 the best game in the Budokai series, featuring characters from both the previous games as well as Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and the Dragon Ball Z movies. According to the official release roster of Dragon Ball FighterZ, the number of selectable characters currently sits at 24, which includes all of the series mainstays. That's Vegeta, Gohan, Krillin, Goku, the androids, and Beerus? Cool. Now, it's worth mentioning that the number of players selects is smaller than the original Budokai, but there is zero doubt that this number has the potential of expanding upon the DLC release. The most recent Dragon Ball Z game, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, had over a dozen fighters released as DLC, so us Dragon Ball fans can only hope. Gameplay and play modes. Structured like the 7 titular Dragon Balls of the show's title, Dragon Ball Z Budokai shipped with 7 game modes available for players. A significant highlight of such levels is the story mode, which allows players to fight through the Dragon Ball Z storyline as various selectable characters and relive the best moments of the television show. There's also Versus mode, allowing for co-op gameplay, and the World Tournament, a tree-based elimination tournament mode. Edit skills enables players to customize their fighters more to their liking, and in the unlockable Legend of Hercule mode, gamers assume the role of Hercule and fight their way through the tournament to victory. Of these primary ways, story mode was unmistakably the standout. The presentation of the story that fans had come to know and love was rightfully the main draw, and Budokai didn't disappoint. Come on guys, you get to play as Goku, and it finally feels rather good. Remember those other Dragon Ball games? Be happy. The original Budokai released to somewhat mixed reviews. It was universally agreed upon that the game perfectly captured the look and feel of the TV show, but many found the actual fighting system somewhat slim. To quote the contemporaneous IGN review, the game never quite grows beyond the Neanderthal techniques you begin with, or rather, when it does, it doesn't make much of a difference. Multi-hit combos don't do that much more damage than a well-placed single hit. Budokai 2 confusingly ditched the story mode of Budokai 1 in favor of something called Dragon World. The setup was akin to a board game that allowed navigation with Goku and several selectable buddy characters on a quest to collect the 7 Dragon Balls. The game is similar to Mario Party, but you virtually fight DBZ enemies instead of actually fighting your childhood friends and significant others. No one was a fan of that aspect of the game. The game upgraded to cel-shaded graphics, which brought the game even closer to looking like the TV show. Fusion characters were also added, purchasable through in-game currency. Players couldn't select fusion characters in the menu like standard fighting games, but they could perform a unique combo with individual characters at a specific time, and voila! Gotenks has entered the bout! Other than Gotenks, Budokai 2 also allowed players to enjoy a handful of what-if fusions. If you ever wonder what a fusion between Yamcha and Tien would look like, then Budokai 2 had your answer with Tiencha, a muscular three-eyed man with a receding hairline. It's pretty much agreed that Budokai 3 solved all the problems its predecessors had. Story mode was back and more dynamic than ever in a mode called Dragon Universe, a free-roaming 3D environment which incorporated story elements from across all the Dragon Ball sagas. Multiple characters were playable and even some RPG light leveling came to the scene. The most important changes though were the ones made under the hood. Introducing fatigue meters. Movesets entered hyper mode, with it dragon rushes and ultimate attacks, which added a lot more depth and strategy to the gameplay. But hardcore Budokai players couldn't get down with dragon rushes, as they were so easy to use and didn't require a lot of skill. Teleport counters became a thing, as did beam struggles, and an overall improvement in the speed of fighting. With this third entry, Budokai had taken a significant step towards graduating beyond the button mashing insults its detractors laid at its feet. With Dragon Ball FighterZ, this bid for reputability hit even more severely. First and foremost, FighterZ was developed by Arc System Works. While ASW has produced a few handheld DBZ games before FighterZ, fans probably know them best for Blaze Blue and the fighting franchise juggernaut Guilty Gear, both highly regarded by the fighting game community. The fighting mechanics are considerably refined as well. Even just watching footage of FighterZ, it's shocking how fast and smooth and honest-to-God technical it looks. Some elements borrow from the Marvel vs. Capcom series, including 3-man tag teams. Another element that might be more familiar to fighting game aficionados and more foreign to those who cut their teeth with Budokai is a total reworking of the control scheme. Now the controls juggle a system of light, medium, and massive attacks, with the 4th button mapped into projectiles. New to the franchise are homing attacks, presumably to make aerial combat more fluid and make gravity feel less important. This critical detail goes with the show's illusion that Saiyans had never actually walked on solid ground. FighterZ also introduced something called a Sparking Blast, similar to the X Factor from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It's a comeback mechanic that gives your character a temporary and significant stats boost and refills the player's blue health gauge. While ASW did cater to fighting fans, they also made sure that FighterZ gameplay was the most character-accurate Dragon Ball fighting game ever. The game splendidly makes each playable fighter's movements fall closer in line with how they actually move in the anime and manga. Everything from how a character punches to their gait has been perfected to the point of congruency between the game and how the movements were originally seen. ASW scoured all forms of Dragon Ball media when looking for references to use in FighterZ. Unique to FighterZ is a brand new Dragon Ball story. While the Budokai games were more or less retreads of the anime, albeit sometimes from different perspectives, FighterZ has an original narrative featuring a brand new character, Android 21, who was designed by Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama specifically for this game. Roundup and looking forward. When it comes to FighterZ, is there anything besides gorgeous gameplay footage and an esteemed pedigree that it indicates a quality game? I mean, first off, what more do you need? Secondly, yes. FighterZ won the Best Fighting Game of E3 2017 from the Game Critics Awards far before its official release. A playable demo was also made available to some of the champs at the Evolution Champion Series 2017, the world's largest fighting game tournament. Feedback from the famously discerning champs was mostly positive. No longer was it, oh, you play that cause you like anime with the hair. Nope, we're talking hitboxes, zone control, considering the verticality of the playing field versus the horizontal plane, and a multitude of gaming mechanics. This wasn't a dismissal, but a genuine discussion of how fighters will fit seriously into the hardcore fighting genre. That means that after all these years, it looks like Dragon Ball's fighting franchise can finally sit at the big kids' table. Respect has been earned with sweat and blood and a whole lot of ki blasts. Congratulations, Dragon Ball. Welcome to the fight. Thank you so much for watching our differences between the Dragon Ball Z Budokai series and Dragon Ball FighterZ. What did we miss? Did you ever play as that monkey kid not Goku in Dragon Power? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon to become part of the notification squad so you'll be notified whenever we upload. And if you like getting more from your games, keep it here to the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.